Come and ride the train, it's a choo-choo train. The song's about a gangbang. We know that.
Oh my god. Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm James.
And I'm John. Can we do it in order? Hey, everybody, I'm John.
And I'm James.
This is Games with John and James. Who has top billing? Me.
Well, technically it would be J-A, not...
Are you oohing the fact that you're playing auto chess right now when you should be focused on the show?
I mean, I will be honest, I started the match and I was like, oh, this will be really easy. And then other people actually played competently, and I'm like, well, this is awkward and I'm here now.
Well, you know what? We'll use this as a transition into what we did this week. As you... I'm looking at your screen. I'm assuming you're doing poorly, so good job.
What? Why would you wish bad on me?
I'm not wishing bad. I'm just assuming bad. No.
You're so mean.
So, while you focus on that, I'll tell the folks
No, I'll let
home.
you... Rude. You get to start, and I will come in over the top.
I like how I invited myself in, and then you said it was rude for me to be in my house. No, but I decided to, after beating Young Souls, I decided to dive into some DLC I had yet to actually dive into. At the start of 2020, we had the masterpiece that was Doom Eternal. And over the course of the next year, we got the DLC of The Ancient Gods 1 and 2. And I finally sat down and beat those, and they were fantastic. Like, that was the promise of what DLC should be. And right now, James is holding a screen that says defeat right in my face.
Suck a dick, John.
Yeah.
Suck a dick.
Yeah, I lost.
Victory. First place. Glorious victory.
Yeah,
I apologize for auto-chessing on podcast.
Yeah, but they don't know what the screen looks like. They only have to go by what I said, so you lost, and it's okay.
That's why I corrected you right away.
No, you lost. It's okay to admit that. I'm trying to force some humility into your soul.
Bro, I'm awesome. Like that song, Spose, I'm awesome. No, you're not, dude, don't lie. I'm awesome.
I just think about Awesome by XV, which is a better song. Anyway... So I dived into the DLC for Doom Eternal, and it was great because a lot of people were very trepidatious when it came to the storytelling of Doom Eternal. But as I saw, and I'm not going to spoil it, I think a lot of people were concerned that the game was going in a narrative direction that was not good, but the way it ended, I was satisfied with it. And when I was finished, it kind of left me with that kind of hole that you do when you beat games where you're like, oh no, it's done.
So, with your review of this, even though it's not a review, I'm going to insert the word review. Would you give it a certified play it?
Oh, it's been a play it ever since I was a kid.
No, this DLC. You didn't know about this DLC when you were a kid. Are you communicating with your future self?
Doom is play it 100%. Each and every one. Including the cell phone RPGs, where you fight the cyber demon before he gets his leg and arm cut off.
Oh, man. So, while John was doing that, so my wife... she went out of town for a little bit, so I was like, oh, cool, Game City. We at work were going like 100 miles an hour, and I made the very genius decision to play basketball 2 hours straight each morning while we were busy at work. So literally, during the week when it's like, yes, the house is mine, gaming to myself, I passed out on the couch.
It happens to all of us, don't worry.
But... I did wake up, and I was like, you know what? I'm itching to dive into an old
I did wake up. I was still alive, thank God.
I know, right? Pinch me. I must be dreaming. Something. So I was like, you know, I want to load up an old PlayStation 2 game. And then I realized I sold my retro collection, and then I realized after that, I was like, oh, wait, I have the PlayStation Premium. So let's dive into their game catalog.
The Bouncer.
Rogue Galaxy.
Oh.
Shout out Level 5.
That's right, they did make games for a while, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
They're gone now, aren't they?
No, I thought that got absorbed by someone. Is this a To the Google in the intro?
Yeah, because Level 5 was responsible for Professor Layton, and I assume that would keep them afloat. Because they also did Yokai Watch, right?
Yeah. Oh, speaking of Yokai Watch, there's a offshoot of, I think it's like the second one, that's worth like $500 freaking dollars.
Nerds will pay anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that Intelligent Systems or whatever, that ones that made the Mario and Luigi, those guys got dissolved. No, that was Alpha Dream. Shit. Intelligent Systems does Fire Emblem. Alpha Dream is the people who did the Mario and Luigi franchise.
Yeah, no,
I'm gamer carding myself.
Yeah, no, level 5 went dead after Azran Legacy and Professor Layton. Professor Layton and the Azran Legacy. After that, they kind of went dead. But yeah, because they also released Fantasy Life, which has become like a low-key hidden gem that everybody's like raving about now, and Ever Oasis.
I like how there's like 20 different versions of like Harvest Moon out there.
Yep.
Man. And
Yep.
And then Chucklefish was just like, you know what? Stardew Valley.
Hold my beer.
And then that took over, and, you know, low-key, Chucklefish's greatest game they've ever published is Pocket Fighter. So,
I mean, that is fair.
Pocket Rumble, I'm stupid.
So, I decided, if you follow me on Instagram, I say me, because, you know, that's my experience. John doesn't want to do anything. It's like cancer to him.
No, it's not a cancer. I just think that, you know, you don't want me stealing the show. That's why I sequester. That's why I sequester myself to Twitter.
Team segregation?
It's separate but equal social media.
I broke him.
The Ruby Bridges of podcasts.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, man. But I
Good thing I'm
decided...
editing this one.
Yeah, you are.
Because this is all staying in. This is gold.
So I finally got to load up Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and it's a breath of fresh air. So...
Do you still collect women in that game?
No.
Oh, wow.
Not that I know of. I haven't gotten a chance to do much, but...
Until you get to the trafficking arc.
The story's been good. Combat's been good. A lot of the tediousness of games like that, because it is an open world style game. Tediousness is, oh, look, node, stop, go, stop, go. All of the, like, annoyances that you get. And they took it away. Like, you're walking around on the map, here's a node, boop, got it, boop, got it, boop, got it. I'm
picturing Lost Planet 2 when you have to mash the button to get the frickin'...
Oh, that would suck. But they streamlined everything. It's been really refreshing. Combat is very engaging. It's honestly, I hate the limitations of the Switch, but I love that they push themselves to their limits with games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3. If you haven't got it yet, or if you're not even familiar with the Xenoblade franchise, play it.
I've heard that they really decided to grow up the series after 2 was kind of an embarrassment, so...
You mean 2, the random waifu hunter?
Yeah.
With a gacha mechanic for blades?
Yes. Entirely that.
Yeah. We're not going to comment on that.
Well, because 1 was pretty down to earth. Like, it was fantasy and all this kind of fun stuff, but it didn't have the fucking secondhand embarrassment simulator of 2.
Yeah, so play Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And in playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3, it gave me an epiphany for our conversation today, which I had an epiphany before Xenoblade Chronicles 3 to make the episode that we're making today, but I digress.
I was looking up that video of Tifa in the Italian Senate, and then, oops. I have an epiphany every night.
It gets resolved very quick.
No, I'm trying to think of a joke about materia. The original white materia.
I like how everything just devolves into sex jokes.
Yeah, because we're two men in our 30s who haven't grown up. Welcome to the Games with John and James podcast.
I'm a big kid now.
But I will no longer hijack the conversation. Please actually have an intro to the episode.
So... we've done a few franchises in the past, and with those franchises, our most recent one was Capcom.
Yeah, the Capcom versus franchise.
And we haven't dove into, honestly, for me, one of my favorite franchises, and arguably the biggest franchise in JRPGs.
Dragon Quest. What the fuck was that? Was that a screen door trying to slam?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna a note for editor. Me put the AOL like sign off door closing noise. No, the
goodbye.
But Final Fantasy is one of the most storied franchises in not just JRPG history, video game history, and it had a meteoric rise. and a meteoric fall.
Well, I think that's putting the cart before the horse.
Now, hold on. Because of that meteoric fall, it has qualified itself for Fallen Franchises, the Final Fantasy story.
Holy crap. And not the Final Fantasy Spirits Within, because that's worth an episode on its own.
It's a free movie on YouTube. Watch it and hate me later.
Watch it and be disappointed or go, meh.
I'm not going to lie. When that movie came out, so I was living in Europe, no preview. I just had heard, like, somebody was like, oh, there's a Final Fantasy movie coming out. So right when it hit shelves at the base exchange, I was like, Final Fantasy, gotta get it. And I watched it. Finished it. Watched it again. Finished it. Watched it a third time to confirm my decision from the first time of what the living dog sack of shit is this, and why did you attach the name Final Fantasy to it? Oh my god, this is awful. I would rather watch Shrek 1 on repeat for life than ever watch this movie again.
So a good movie. You'd rather watch a good movie.
At the time, I didn't like it.
Oh, well, nobody's perfect.
You're right. Everyone else is meh, and James is God.
We're going to get into this conversation again. This is why I have top billing, folks. If you had top billing, do you have any idea how much slander, how sanctimonious he'd be?
He lords it over me every day.
He'd be the new Alex Jones.
Speaking of which, going broke with $50 million in payout.
I say that motherfucker's still going to be rich, but I'm glad that he's actually receiving justice. Let's not go into too much about that. How about we take a break right here, and then we'll dive right into the topic at hand. What do you say?
Don't touch that dial. When we come back, John is going on a journey of final of fantasy.
I'm going to find the spirit within.
Tacos.
No.
He's fighting saying things.
We'll take a break right here. See you, folks. I did save that, yes. I was actually going to make a joke about how, like, do TVs actually have dials anymore, or are they just panels with nothing? Because I got an LG OLED TV recently, and the panel on that thing is so thin that I'm actually worried it's just going to snap in half. As I'm looking at that thing, and it's paper thin, I'm just like, I don't want to sneeze next to the thing, because it might break it.
Earthquake! No! Protect the TV! Protect the TV!
And then the TV falls on me and crushes me.
It doesn't crush you. It like falls and like you break a hole right through it, and you're like,
and they have like a cookie cutter me. Jeez. But welcome back, everybody. You were enthralled by the thinness of panels of TV conversation. We have the actual topic at hand where we're going to talk about Final Fantasy. And I will wholly admit at the start that in terms of things like emotional impact and story, character beats, lines and stuff, the actual emotional content of the Final Fantasy franchise, I'm out of my depth. But
you were not out of your depth.
I want to finish my statement.
Okay.
When it comes to the actual development history and knowing who was in charge of the franchise and where the inspirations came from, the design aspects of that stuff, that's where I'm a bit more learned. So I think we will actually see... I think that actually kind of suits our approaches to video games a bit better, because I'm always very much more the technical, analytical side of stuff, and you are very much more of like... I'll say it, you're the heart whenever we talk about games.
I can feel it in the heart.
And a needle full of lightning.
So with this, everybody, even if you don't dive into the RPG genre, right? You know about Final Fantasy, be it Cloud and Sephiroth from Smash, be it the random
Cloud and Sephiroth smashing,
Ayo, be it any of the other random references. Final Fantasy is part of mainstream video game culture.
Between Moogles and Chocobos and like white mages and black mages and stuff. Yeah, they're iconic for a reason.
So we're going to rewind time. We're going to bring you back into the 80s. Video game.
Unlike everything in pop culture for the past, 30 years.
I mean, it's the 80s every decade.
Great.
Except for fashion. Great. Fashion went from 80s to 90s to 2000s, and I think now we're back in the 90s.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Y2K aesthetic where everything was, designed by Fisher-Price.
You mean the cult aesthetic?
Awesome.
Well, we know what you're joining.
Yeah, and...
The cult of donut.
Yes. Oh, I've been in that cult forever. Look at my stomach.
So, it's 1987. The regular Nintendo, or the Famicom, over in Japan, it's meeting with a lot of success. And
except in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Thank you, Sega.
RPGs were... At the time, they were honestly more computer games. Your Wizardry, Ultimas, all of that. People didn't really know. And the Godfather, shout out to my man, Hironobu Sakaguchi.
I thought you were going to say Richard Garriott, but okay. Lord British? The guy who made Ultima?
Okay, I mean, fair. I will wholeheartedly admit, I've never played an Ultima.
I see.
Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, you don't even have anything behind it. It was just it's like a half-hearted shart.
Well, because I was too busy playing Wolfenstein.
Okay, I mean, that's fair.
I was playing the LucasArts game, I was playing Wolfenstein, and then Doom came in, and I was like, neat, thanks, Uncle Jeff.
Hey! But Sakaguchi and team came out, and at its core principle, the 4 heroes of light, finding the 4 crystals, defeating the evil villains, it's very cut and dry. And
it does everything that a story should do, which is give you a simple through line / plot / MacGuffin hunt where you can explore character stuff through. Actual pen and paper games used to do.
And it hit hard. It hit hard. When it came to your gaming experience back then, you had your Marios, you had your Zeldas.
Which was, I think, Zelda would be the first real, implementation of an adventure game.
Mm-hmm. But you didn't have the story. And Final Fantasy 1, my opinion, for console gaming, that was our first taste of story. And it was a big risk because if people didn't play it, people didn't want to experience it, or it's oh yeah, why do I want to do this? Let me go get my Mario. We wouldn't JRPGs and RPGs as we know it. I think it would have just fell into the Zelda vein.
Well, at the same time, you wonder because when Final Fantasy was being made and projected hey, we can do this and we can save the company because Square was about to go bankrupt if they didn't have a good selling game afterward. They were worried about the actual, clout that an RPG would have on consoles. And then they saw, sure enough, Dragon Quest was the pioneer and said, oh, we can do this. So how about we, implement these Ultima and Wizardry type systems in a game that we make? And what was funny when I was doing my research for this was when they started implementing things like a spell system in their game and how in that day, there was things like fire and ice didn't have elemental damage on certain fire and ice characters, and I'm just how do you not do that in your game?
It's funny because so even
Dragon Quest had a stairs option. I'm sorry. I mean that's how rudimentary these games were.
Yeah, and so fun random tangent. Final Fantasy 1 Bahamut was King Bahamut or Bahamut or however you want to call it. So, but he actually, you didn't fight him. He was a friendly NPC. So if you look at the history of Final Fantasy, every iteration going through, he went from friendly kind of, just little side character to now you got to fight him to, oh shit, he just broke free from the other world.
And now he's a summon.
Yep.
And now, depending on what Final Fantasy 16 does, you might be able to become him.
That'd be kind of cool.
That would be full circle, baby.
Yep. So Final Fantasy 1, it hit the ground running. And it did, like John mentioned, it saved the company. It allowed them to continue to dive deeper into this. So in Japan, Final Fantasy 2 hits.
Like the next year, yeah.
And that's when... So with Final Fantasy 2, you start getting... the system with Final Fantasy 2 was a complete deviation from the system with Final Fantasy 1. It was, the more you do something, the better you are at it. So I use fire a bunch of times, my fire magic gets stronger. I'm attacking a bunch of times, my attack gets stronger.
The fact that you could actually get experience points and things aren't assigned to a class only.
And what will blow your mind is it came from the team that eventually branched away to go into the Saga series.
Mm-hmm. The more that I've actually done research for this topic as well, like... I give current day Square Enix a lot of flack for recycling ideas or having things kind of spin off into offshoots of other things. When I look at the history of their company and how the Final Fantasy franchise spawned so many other franchises that they just neglect at this point, it's pretty crazy how that's just how they've operated.
Yeah, they're like the godfather of so many things, but now it's like they've abandoned their godchildren. Thanks.
Just like all godparents do.
Fuck you, godchid!
Parasite Eve, we need third birthday sucked, so we'll never make a fourth one. They need to make up for third birthday. Okay,
I mean, that's fair. But Final Fantasy 2 was still... So, on the regular Nintendo, huge success on both of them. And then we started with the Game Boy offshoots, which was, the Final Fantasy Legend series, which is technically part of the Mana series.
Well, localization and stuff, because this is where talking about the history of this franchise is kind of sort of muddy, is because
it's not a straight line. It's like a giant fucking clusterfuck of a labyrinth.
Yeah, it's just a giant hole in the West, whereas, Final Fantasy is like, you want to play Final Fantasy 3? Do you mean Final Fantasy 6? Like that kind of crap.
Yeah. Or Final Fantasy 2, you mean 4?
It's obnoxious. So talking about it is it's hard from a Western perspective to really understand the iterative process of what it meant to make these games, but I don't want to take over too much here.
Oh, I mean, hey, your input is valid, even if you're wrong.
I'm trying to appease you and let you have your episode. So
hey, this is a mutual episode. You did a lot of research. I was expecting you to kind of, PS1 JRPG top 10 kind of approach it, but you're like, so we went to breakfast this morning to kind of hash out, everything. Hey-o. And he's like, yeah, and doing my research, this is this, this is this, this is this, and it's like, and I'm just like smiling on the inside. I was like, he does care.
Yeah, and I don't want to steal too much or give up the ghost too much, because just in my research finding out who was brought into the team at what time and how that influenced each game and stuff is really interesting. So we're still on 2, y'all.
Yeah, right. So 2, again, it was met with quite a bit of success. We got to experience it as well. It was fun. I liked the change in 2. Personally, I really enjoyed... I like the Saga system. I like the, hey, I'm doing something. That means I need to get better in it. I appreciate that in video games, because you can only fucking kill a slime so many times without any improvement before you're like, fuck you, I'm out.
I think you vastly underestimate how much people are willing to grind. Because it's all worth it when that metal slime shows up.
Hey, I am one of them. My hours spent.
Yeah, we talked about it in the intro. Yeah.
So, but then
if only Blitzball could make you good at something in real life.
Hey, water polo.
Did you actually swim in? Whatever. That's just too much of a leap. Back on track.
So Final Fantasy 3. So we're moving kind of fast through these because the beginning generation was kind of the dawn. It was kind of the opening. Final Fantasy 3, that was the first one where the West, it was just weird. We didn't get to experience Final Fantasy 3 until the DS.
It's true.
And 3 built upon 2. 3 implemented a very rudimentary job system. And I say rudimentary because your first jobs, you will have advanced so much in before you get the next jobs. It's like, well, fuck it. I don't want to do any other job.
I think Final Fantasy 3 was also the one that had your hit points on screen as opposed to just telling you.
Yep.
Again, this is how rudimentary these games were.
So
imagine playing a game right now where you had to keep track of your health bar by writing it down. Holy crap. That'd be kind of cool, actually.
Be very involved.
Tunic 2 RPG.
Come on, Fox.
Come on, Fox, live.
Star Fox, no!
There's no... Hey, this is a no slippy zone. This is a Sigma male only podcast. All right, friggin' Andrew. Who let the NFT in?
So, Final Fantasy 3, it built on it, and when you got to experience it on the DS, it was kind of nice. There's some cutscenes. The story evolved a little bit more, but it was very, here's your map. You're literally point A to point B to point C to point D, kind of done. So it was still kind of linear-esque.
Well, I think if it's a delivery vehicle for a story that you're trying to tell, it makes sense.
And yeah, and look what it had come out on from back in the day. Like, even though we were getting to play it on the DS, and we're talking almost 20 years in between, it's still a recreation of back then.
Yeah. Nostalgia. It sells.
Hey, look at gaming now.
Yeah. Hey, Ernest Klein, you want to make more money?
Oh, shout out. You want to talk about nostalgia. So, Ys 8, Lacrimosa of Dana, right?
Uh-huh.
Came out on the PS4 originally. Then it came out on the Switch. And arguably one of the best action RPGs you can play. Literally, NIS America was like, how much money can I milk? Hey, look, for the PS5.
Isn't that the one that I played? Was that Ys 9?
No, you played 9, Monstrum of Nox.
Okay.
So that one people liked as well. But 8, way better.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So why didn't you let me play that one?
Because I was playing it at the time.
Selfish bastard.
I'm not stopping. I loved that game.
Okay. But anyway, so Final Fantasy 3, we finally get to experience it on the DS like 20 years later. Now we're moving into the 4 and 5 category.
So 4, in my opinion, is where you saw this series blossom into arguably its golden age. Its mecca of awesomeness. Mm-hmm. And for us in America, 4 was 2. Thanks.
I still think it's funny because they just didn't bother localizing the 2.
Yeah.
Which also, just one fun quick fact about the original NES games. When they were programmed, one of the combat systems, I believe, were programmed by an Iranian-American gentleman who was there on a work visa. So a very eclectic team over there at Square Enix Japan.
It was. Like, if you look at how they were set up back then, risk-taking, open to ideas, branches of games because they realized, hey, this doesn't fit this formula, but it can be its own thing. It was
a
good.
Polar opposite
yeah.
of now.
Thanks, oppression.
Thanks, Novella Crystallis Quadratum, Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. Jesus. Here's Sephiroth and Cloud walking. Oh, shit.
Oh, look at that preview.
Oh, my God, they're going to take out their big swords. Oh, shit.
By big sword,
can we just get the game narrated like that? I would actually play it. And look, there's Tifa about to punch a dude. Oh, look out, boy. It's like ASMR Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy SMR.
I would do that.
I know you would. I legitimately think you would dive into it.
And then you see KHC, it's like, I'm going to do vape tricks. Yo, here's a ring. There's a ring going through that ring. Oh, shit.
Oh, completely random. I didn't know this, but did you know you could one-shot the Emerald weapon with Kate Sith?
How?
His limit.
What? His
final limit, if you get it to where it's all of the cat face, he performs a move called Game Over. And it literally one-shots the fucking weapon.
I really wish I could go back in time and tell my brother that, because he spent so much time trying to beat those fucking weapons.
I literally saw that yesterday, and I was like, holy shit, I didn't know this. I'm still learning stuff about 7. Now, back to 4, though. So, 2, as we played it, 4, as it is, and got corrected with the Game Boy Advance and every iteration moving forward. It was the start of storytelling magic. Limitations of hardware being the Super Nintendo aside, we got this grand adventure of Cecil, the Dark Knight, his redemption to become a paladin, and all of the wonderful characters that were incorporated into it. The War of the Nations, eventually moving to the moon, fighting on the moon.
Fighting Nazis on the moon.
It was such a wonder to behold. And it was done before your Chrono Triggers, before the pinnacle, obviously, of 6 and 5. 5 being the best Final Fantasy of all time right now, for me, opinion, blah, blah, blah.
I believe it was also until Final Fantasy 9, it was Hironobu Sakaguchi's personal favorite as well.
No, that was 5.
Which one are we talking about? 4?
4.
Okay. No, I think you said 5 was your favorite.
Oh, I did say 5 was my favorite. You were commenting on that, but I said back to 4, and then you said that. Yeah. So you a dumb, and I'm a dumb.
We're both dumb. Let's just talk about our freaking chicken game.
So 4 it was beyond amazing. It actually had emotional impact as well. Like at one point,
when Aerith died, oh my god.
I hate you. So at one point, you have twin mages. You have twins, right? A mage and like a dancer warrior person. And in order for your party to get to where they're going, they sacrifice themselves and turn to stone to block a passage from sealing on you. Like, that's emotional investment. Cecil's journey to become a paladin, emotional investment. 4 was when Square Enix learned the true art of storytelling.
Mm-hmm. All I hear about, when I hear that, I'm reminded of how they did the similar thing in Dragon Quest. Because the scene where you turn to stone and you actually see over the seasons change over time until your son comes and resurrects you.
Oh, I mean, yeah, kind of. I can see that. I can see the argument for that.
Well, like, one hand kind of washes the other. You know what I mean? Like, other things influence each other. And that's fine. It's just that when you said, like, they get turned to stone, I'm just like, wait a minute. It sent off alarm bells in my head. I'm like, I've heard that before.
Spidey senses tingle.
My JRPG senses tingle, because I have some.
So
why do you think I play the bouncer so much?
And that was a fun one. That was a fun game.
Play the Hollywood action movie made by Dream Factory, and Sora, if he was down on his luck. Because if you look at Sion and compare it to Sora, Tetsuya Nomura has been making the same character for 15 years.
Big facts.
Big facts.
So, speaking of Nomura, 4 for the Super Nintendo, it didn't meet much success here at the time because RPGs and JRPGs they were very niche here in America.
Think about the Western market at the time.
Yeah.
And think about...
We wanted Sonic.
We wanted Sega, for sure. We wanted gritty 90s, Tom Kalinske wrapped and endorsed, like, edgy games. So that's what we got. Or we wanted sports games, or we wanted shooters, or like... Because these games were being made at the same time the rest of the games industry was happening around it.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, Nintendo stuck to its guns and pretty much stayed traditional with a lot of the stuff that they did. And you got a wonderful amount of games out of it, but just market differences were just like, yeah, people who are like the main demographic of who plays games wants things different, and that's what they did. They made things different. And that's why we got things like Doom and Wolfenstein and Comic Zone and Sonic the Hedgehog and all these games and Mortal Kombat.
You'll always insert Sonic the Hedgehog into a conversation.
Because it's punk rock Mickey Mouse, man. I'm part of the fan club.
But 4 met with critical success. 5 comes. We don't get to experience 5 until the PlayStation 1 when it was part of Final Fantasy Anthology, 5 and 6.
Yep.
5 is where, you heard John mention him, Nomura first came onto the scene.
Yep. He designed the monsters.
And
I'm not talking about his character design.
5 was 5 was awesome. So for me, 5 is my favorite. It's got an amazing job system. It's 2 worlds split, merged back into one. Hell, the final boss is a tree.
Okay. Was it like Yggdrasil, the life tree or whatever?
No, Exdeath. He was an ancient tree from the forest who decided he wanted to say, fuck that, I'm going to rule the world.
So it's an Ent from frickin' Tolkien.
Basically.
That was pissed off.
Basically.
I see what you humans did in the forests. You cut down my kin.
So they kept... he killed his own kin, which was, genocide.
I don't know stories, man. I just know... I've heard Exdeath before. I'm like, that sounds like a badass. Now I know it's Wispy Woods.
So some of the tropes started to hit with 5. So 5 gave us our comedic villain, Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh. If people who know, they know.
So, comical villain, you could steal from him every time you fought him and like build up the Genji set for your armor and stuff. It was stupid. It was funny. And then finally he's like, no, I want to be more. And then Exdeath is like, oh, hey, fuck you, Void, and just sucks him into the Void. And your party is literally just like watching it. And you're having this feeling of,
watching with popcorn, just like, he just killed that guy. We watched.
Neat.
You ever watch a man be murdered?
So they built on, so 4 had their powerful moments. 5's powerful moment came from Galuf, who he's one of your mages you have at the beginning. Mm-hmm. When he regains his memory, he goes back to the other world, which they travel to on meteors. So go figure.
Yeehaw.
Like, magical meteors.
Put a little saddle on there.
And he dies. Like there's this big scene where Exdeath has your party on the ropes. He breaks free of the spell, fights him, and Exdeath is like, and literally in the fight, Exdeath is like, meteor, die, flare, blah, blah, blah.
Meteors, why'd you betray us?
And all you're seeing is just thousands and thousands and thousands of damage. He doesn't die in the fight. You actually get to do some moves. It's cool dialogue, and then you have this powerful moment where the whole party is around him, and they're legit doing what you would expect. Looking at you, Final Fantasy VII. You see Kiraga. You see life. You see full life. Like you actually you get the dialogue of it happening, and it's not
sizzle.
And it's not working. And then he dies. All his stuff passes over to his daughter. It's his daughter or granddaughter, one of them. And you get to continue. It's still the formula with the crystals, right? Those are still there, but now there's 8 of them. 4 on one world, 4 on the other. When they're broken, the worlds come back together. But I
know what they didn't do.
What?
They didn't use Phoenix Down.
They might have. I don't know. I don't remember the full dialogue. Hey, looks like I have to play that game next, which I said I would.
I just like the idea of Cloud just being like, are you nuts? Do you have any idea how much those cost? I'm not using Phoenix Down. Wait a minute, I'm live stream, so I guess I could.
I'm poor. You get a potion.
Also, you're a vampire. What are you even doing in my party?
So 5, it's kind of the black sheep, honestly. It's one of those, you either like it or you hate it. There's no middle ground. Some people won't even experience it just because meh. Because
nerds have, territory dick measuring contests all the time.
So, because Nintendo knew they were onto something, right? They, especially over in Japan. And so literally right on schedule, right on that production machine, Final Fantasy VI comes out.
Mm-hmm. Just one other brief side tangent. One brief side quest wink. It's the fact that the people who the benefit of these original games, the original Final Fantasy games, is that they pretty much had every single person from the beginning still working on the games up until 6 and 7. So what's crazy is that we talked about how the Saga series came out of Final Fantasy 2 and that. Secret of Mana came out of 4 because with the advent of new technology and the Super Nintendo and stuff like that, they wanted to initially make 4 and 5 split between the console generations, one for the Nintendo and one for the Super Nintendo. And then when the combat designer / programmer was like, hey, we want to maybe make this a bit more action-y, they realized, oh, this isn't Final Fantasy anymore. And that's what became Secret of Mana, which is another franchise that they just let die.
Hey, we did get Trials of Mana, the remake.
Yeah, we also got that shitty remake of Secret of Mana, so.
Yeah, fair.
Square is so hot and cold.
They are. Oh, buddy, they are.
Yeah, but okay, we're getting to the magnum opus for the Super Nintendo, which is Final Fantasy VI.
So Final Fantasy VI. So a majority of people, they're going to tell you it's either 6 or 7. That's the best Final Fantasy, point blank and period.
No one says 13.
Poor Lightning. She was not striking twice.
Well,
she struck 3 times.
And no one cared. Friggin', we'll talk about those games when we get to them, but continue.
So Final Fantasy VI deviated, and it deviated in the sense of the combat was kind of the same, but the way you were able to unlock certain spells, and the way you were able to unlock spells was by equipping espers. So basically, you have a tribe of espers who basically sacrifice themselves and turn themselves into some crystal where you can summon them. But
what is it with this franchise and crystal? I swear to God.
Yeah, I don't know. But it was steampunk the game. That is the best way to describe Final Fantasy VI.
When you see the frickin' giant steampunk robots cresting a mountain in the opening cutscene, jeez.
Yeah.
I played Final Fantasy VI very briefly. I got through some of the intro parts of it before I was kind of I don't know, I was 12, I didn't care. So, But I remember just seeing that and even not even appreciating the game fully. I still appreciated just wow, this is different and this is cool, and I get why people like it.
It gave us arguably the best villain in the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Kefka,
the Joker,
was a psychopath.
Yeah. Force of nature villains work well in stories that have themes, so he is the perfect fit for that.
It enhanced everything. They finally started taking a turn. It was no more Warriors of the Light. It was no more crystals. It was no more cookie cutter. It started every game needs to be truly different. And they did it well. I mean, it's one of the very few games where you lose.
Yep.
Legitimately, Kefka's oh, cool, I'm finally here. Fuck you, King, you're dead.
I'm gonna shit downstream.
And cool, the world, you're fucked. And then it fast forwarded into the future. I mean, yes, you eventually do fight Kefka, you win, but the damage is done.
Yeah, there's one of the things that is a constant motif in a lot of Final Fantasy games is despite some of the darkest elements, there still is optimism in a lot of the actual endings of the stories. There's usually the happy ending. And that is, I'm just planting that seed for later.
And hell, 6 gave us Shadow.
Yes, it did.
And if you did everything you need to do in order to acquire him as a character, at the end of the game, he's literally getting ready to kill himself, the world will be better off without me kind of shit.
He's a Nomura character, you can tell.
And it was cool. You got a wild...
It was cool. Just hearing, I'm going to kill myself. Yeah, it was cool.
I like the character. I mean, hell...
Just hearing that was funny.
Yeah. I mean, rewind it to the beginning of the game, the ghost train. And the monk can pile drive the ghost train.
That's Sabin, right? Yes. And I think it's interesting how with what you're talking about and touching on with 6 was that there's no more Warriors of Light and the stuff like that. There's no ordained chosen ones and stuff. The story focuses on people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a very good thing that Final Fantasy introduced into its franchise.
It was also the start of Everyone the Same, so what I say by that is everyone can equip the espers, which means everybody will learn the abilities or the magic from the espers. So
this is the birth of the materia system.
Kind of.
Okay.
So they were still unique in the sense they still had their own abilities. Saban was the monk, Edgar, you had Terra, you had everybody still had their own uniqueness.
I'm just picturing, as you're saying these characters' names, I'm just picturing what they look like in that Yoshitaka Amano style of art. I'm just how are these clowns going to save the world?
These misfits.
These frickin' leggings wearing, tank top toting, monk train pile driving mother.
And so it brings us to the pinnacle of change that happened with the franchise.
And I know what game that is, but I think it'd be good to take just a quick break so we can gather our thoughts a little bit and give the audience some breathing room here, because for as storied as this franchise is, like, there is a definite, like, separation point of what happened with this franchise. And that's why we're talking about it.
So, enjoy. Cue Final Fantasy music.
I'm editing this one. It's probably going to be, like, jungle music.
I will fight you. No. No.
There's jungle tracks in Final Fantasy. That's where the Lost is going to go in again. All right. We'll be right back, folks. We'll see you. Like, or we could just talk about it now and just record it. It's like we can do like the replay like we used to do, or we could actually start our blog and do stuff there, because I still have that ready. I'm building it.
We need to. Look, I blame me for that one. Okay,
I blame the both of us. I can be writing shit.
Yeah, I feel like we both had a little bit of burnout here lately, in the sense of just like, well, you dying in Washington.
I didn't do much in Washington. I was just busy all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I got to watch soccer for 2 weeks and just be like, that's a kick. Like, that's shot on goal. Like, it's fucking me with a whiteboard. They gave me a laptop, right? And it was rigged up to a system that would actually display stats on screen, because that's how productions usually work when it comes to broadcasting this stuff. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the actual minute-to-minute stuff, when I was watching the game, like, I'm not seeing the broadcast of it. So I'm not seeing, like, the screen. I'm not seeing the camera's perspective. I'm just in the booth, like arcing my head around things to see the field. And I'm like, is that a shot on goal? Yeah.
That's funny.
And, I mean, it gave me a lot more respect for a lot of the broadcasting that goes into, like, sporting events. Because you think, because it just looks so smooth, everything's just automatic. No, man, that takes work.
Yep.
It takes a lot of work and a lot of people coordinated to make it work.
So...
Who is... All right. Oh, hey, baby.
All right. So...
Let me just check my messages. Shut the fuck up! All right, back to the show.
Well, welcome back from apparently some Final Fantasy music. I'm going to guess jungle music.
It's kind of going to be like the Blitzball music.
Oh, I'm okay with that. I respect that.
Or I'm gonna get like Unreal Tournament music and convince you it's fucking Final Fantasy music.
Seeing as I have every album on vinyl, I will fight you.
You'd be surprised what I could find.
But
Foregone Destruction, this belongs to a Final Fantasy game.
So we left off with 6, which 6 I think was a great send off for their games on the Super Nintendo. It's when they took that first big turn. They took risks. Because you have a winning formula, and now you're scene. Yep, and now you're gonna switch it over completely. Like, not just like, oh, here's a subtle change. No, here's a giant fucking deviation, and it met with success, which led us into Final Fantasy VII,
the game that Square Enix has been trying to make again for 20 years.
And it has started it, and we'll have a 3-part series.
No,
part 2 coming out soon.
No, I don't think you understand what I'm saying when I say that. They have been trying to make that exact same success, lightning in a bottle game for decades.
So I get that, but I was trying to, be optimistic with it. Not
kind of like Final Fantasy, whereas I'm like Versus 13, where I'm just dark and brooding. We'll talk about that one. Don't worry, folks.
So the rift happens between Sony and Nintendo.
Square and Nintendo, you mean?
No, remember, because...
you mean the thing of the PlayStation, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So the Rift happens, and it's essentially, Nintendo doesn't want to do what they promised they would do with Sony, so Sony goes out, they create their own console. There are 2 Nintendo PlayStations in existence.
Damn.
If you ever get to see one, enjoy it and embrace it. If you get to buy one of the 2, they're $500,000 on average. Good fucking luck.
Does it actually play PlayStation games and Nintendo games?
I don't think it plays. So none of the discs were developed that would work for it, but it's the concept machine, so you can still play the 64 game.
There is a prototype out there of a Sega Saturn that allowed for net play. I want that so bad.
What's it run?
Sega Saturn games.
No. Cost-wise.
Oh, I have no idea. I think there's only like one in existence. I think someone just has it because it was in a closet.
Buy it.
If someone just wants to give that to me, if the one person who has it just wants to give me that. Oh, and if you have a concept of the Neptune, give me that too.
So the Rift happens, and I want to say it was E3. It was one of the big conventions. They started to show. So Sony was showing off the character models and stuff from what Final Fantasy VI would look like 3D.
That was the thing I was actually going to touch on because I remember them doing a tech demo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so people are, they're warming to it and everything. And
you telling me we can get Cecil in polygons? Here's my $60.
Shut up and take my money.
Sir, have $1 billion.
$1 billion.
All right, we've milked that dry.
And Square, they bet the farm on Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII, if it flopped, Square ceases to exist.
So they were in another Final Fantasy position.
At the time, it was the most expensive video game ever made. They sunk an asinine amount of money. I don't know the total, but I will find it, and it will be on Instagram this week, so keep a look.
I believe it was anywhere between the ballpark of $45 to $65 million equivalent back then.
It's insane. And the risk that they took paid off in spades because literally...
Yeah, it did.
Or literally, 25 years of Final Fantasy VII history. And in that 25 years of Final Fantasy VII history, we have Dirge of Cerberus, we have Crisis Core, we have
Advent Children.
We
have the remake, we have Cloud and Sephiroth in Smash, we've got...
Dissidia.
We've got Dissidia.
Like...
the most easy layup concept of a game, and then they screw it up like Pokken. Jesus. You even had Harada working on Pokken, Nintendo. What the fuck were you doing?
Hey, that's fair.
That's gonna be a fallen episode for me, just talking about why is Pokken so bad?
It's just
why didn't they
40 minutes of that statement.
Why didn't they just make Tekken with Pokemon? Why?
That would have been great.
It would have been great, but they didn't. Oh.
So 7 hits. You all know the story of 7. It's blah blah blah. Soldier, Sephiroth, and Jenova want to bring Meteor. Aerith dies.
Eco-terrorists, yeah.
Yeah, its story was powerful because the new medium allowed for better storytelling, and their big selling point, and this is the start of that selling point going sour.
Yes, I'm glad you said it because immediately in my mind, one of the things that made Final Fantasy VII such a lightning in the bottle game was that everything was unified around the central theme of the story, and it was reflected through the music, the characters, and the plot line. Every single element was... I've described games before like a tight script.
It was a harmonious amalgamation, because at any point...
from true inspiration.
Exactly. And where it soured, so this was... Final Fantasy VII was the advent of the cutscene.
The spectacle.
And those cutscenes helped push and drive the story, or they added to the severity of what was going on. So
that pull out from Midgar?
Oh.
Dude, iconic.
The first weapon that comes out, not the ultimate weapon, like the easy one you fight, that's part of the story battle, and it's just walking and just ominously walking, gets hit with the Mako cannon and just keeps going.
Yep.
Like
Tifa slapping that chick on top of the cannon.
Oh my god. It was perfection in a video game.
Yep.
Does it have its flaws? Sure. Every game does if you want to really, really get into it, but
The gay sex scene.
you had amazing story, you had amazing side content, you had one central theme, one central villain. You fleshed out all of your characters. That powerful moment where Nanaki, Red 13, actually finally realizes that his dad didn't abandon his family. And you get that cutscene in Cosmo Canyon where it goes up to the petrified remains of his father with those spears in him.
Yep.
Because he saved Cosmo Canyon.
Yep.
That was powerful.
When you saw Barrett and how he got his gun arm, when you saw like the flashback to when who actually was the one who killed Sephiroth and who Zack was.
No words. Like, arguably, at the time, perfection for storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you see the franchise start to take a turn. And this is where the Fallen begins to creep.
So I will let you talk about the games themselves moving forward, but for me, this is where I care about this stuff particular because I care about game design. And
100%.
I care about story. I care about all these elements, right? When we say that the Fallen franchise is a Final Fantasy, is because they internalized the wrong message with Final Fantasy VII, and it said spectacle is king. So, when you said it was the birth of the cutscene, it wasn't just the cutscene. It was literally the cutscene being the only thing. How, like, the image of something is more important than the content.
We're both in agreement that the cutscene and spectacle was perfect for Final Fantasy VII.
Because it reinforced the theming and the narrative and the blah, blah, blah.
So then you get Final Fantasy VIII.
And you see the duel, and it looks awesome.
The trailer, you get that duel, and it's like, oh, cool. Squall, Gunblade. This is awesome.
Fur coat, Cypher, badass.
And in their penchant to now make everything different, you got arguably one of the dumbest leveling and combat systems known to man, period.
I do like how you make money, though. You just walk around and you get money.
I'm lazy, but I'm still gonna get money.
I'm gonna tie a rubber band around my controller and just run in a circle.
So 7, for what it was polished. Was it still polygony-ish and all that stuff? Yeah, of course. This is early 3D technology, but
But those aesthetics actually kind of echoed what the original Final Fantasy characters looked like, at least.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool.
It didn't really bother you, because you were immersed.
Mm-hmm.
8, holy shit.
Yeah, I want you to compare the remastered screenshots to the original, because some people might have a hard time picturing this. Do that.
When I show you this, holy dog nuts.
Yeah, I'll put it on the Twitter, y'all.
Good God. It was literally like a brick.
It was a crusty brick.
So 8, the risks they took, they didn't pay off. Like, 8 is arguably one of the least favorite games in the franchise. It's liked more than 13, but that doesn't say much.
Well, I think it strikes a chord too, because they tried to do the lightning in a bottle again with like this empty cipher of a protagonist. But at least with Final Fantasy VII, it was centered around the theme of loss and identity, whereas this one's just like, I'm a broody, angsty guy with a scar on my face. Also, my name's Leon now. Those are my pronouns.
Yeah. So 8 was like, it was a night and day from Final Fantasy VII.
You know what 8 gave us? Zell. Good.
I hate you.
Got him.
Like, Doom Train, The Summon, Ultimecia.
Hey, Shiva, she was looking fine. Even in bad graphics, in crusty brick graphics, she was fine.
So, and that's one thing we didn't touch on. I apologize. 7 also gave us the advent of really cool animation for the summons.
Yeah, who doesn't remember watching Knights of the Round 1,000,000 times in a row?
Or when Shiva, you first get to do Diamond Dust, and you just see her spiral down.
And then you see, what the fuck? The one where Jupiter explodes.
Oh, Supernova.
Yeah.
Sephiroth summon.
Yeah.
Like, Supernova was awesome.
When you see Jupiter go, whoop.
So,
And let's watch that 10 more times, please.
exactly.
But is there more to touch on with 8? Because I think it's as empty as we make it sound.
There was so much promise.
It had a cool lion man.
And it failed to deliver.
Yeah.
Then
Hironobu Sakaguchi comes in and says, hey, guys.
We need to have a return to form because this steampunk shit is obnoxious.
We gotta go. We gotta go back to fantasy times.
And we get Final Fantasy IX.
Which I think is long seen as like a dark horse of the entire franchise, but every time I've talked to people, they're like, dude, that's my favorite one.
It's so good. So it goes back. You have your main theme, but then you actually get behind the main theme. And then
it's called subtext, James.
Behind that, there's a tie-in to like Final Fantasy IV.
Woo! When you say Vivi walking around, you know it's tied into the OGs.
And you want to talk about like tugging on your heartstrings. Like when Vivi finds out he's literally just been created in a factory and has 1 year to live.
Oof.
Like, holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you get to see the growth of Zidane from just, oh, little thiefy dude to, hey, you know what? Fuck you. Mm-hmm. I am not just a homunculus.
Yep.
Kuja, who was a villain, has his justice, like he has a redemption arc at the end of the game. You don't get that with villains.
I'm picturing the scene where it's like, what a bimbo.
Storytelling was amazing. The summons, the spectacle got even bigger. Like Alexander was a freaking castle. And then you had that cutscene where Bahamut is coming in and Alexander is just like, Holy Ray, get wrecked.
The thing that it was interesting was that like the origins in terms of the tone of Final Fantasy for me always felt like a pen and paper game. Mm-hmm. And then it eventually evolved into what felt like a toy box. And then you kind of made your own characters and stories with it.
Yep. Like 7 and 8 were like one of the weaknesses of both of them is anybody could be anything. Like 7, you had no separating factor other than how the character looked.
Yep.
Everybody could equip the same materia. Everybody could equip the same weapons, armor. Like, yeah, there were unique weapons and looks, but
so why do people hate 12 so much? That's the question.
So 9, giant return to form. You get a powerful. Like 9 literally feels like you're not taken on the adventure. You are going on the adventure.
And that's what Final Fantasy was supposed to be. At least as far as everybody I've talked to, the engagement of those games is that. And so, yay.
So during this time as well, back on the PlayStation 1, you got arguably the best offshoot Final Fantasy game being Final Fantasy Tactics.
Here we go.
So this is a very brief mention, but Final Fantasy wanted to kind of capitalize on what was going on with Tactics Ogre, Shining Force, all of the strategy RPGs, and Fire Emblem. But
Disgaea that was too.
Before Disgaea was PlayStation 2, not PS1.
I know, but you can see the elements transfer over.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. And the original creator, like the original brain behind Tactics Ogre, the company he was working for was stymieing his creativity. They're like, no, you're going to do this. And it's going to be like this. He had no creative anything. So Final Fantasy is like, hey, we want you to do this for us. And he's like, well, it's not it's not just Final Fantasy. Okay, well, it's going to be Final Fantasy Tactics.
Brilliant.
And you get probably the best game ever for the delivery of a job system. It pays homage to, yet again, Final Fantasy VII, because Cloud is an unlockable character.
Wow, really?
Yeah, you can get Cloud in Final Fantasy Tactics. And he gets all of his limits, too.
Where does Air Guides come into play?
Now, here's the cool part, though. Tactics is actually it's in the world of Evilus, which is Final Fantasy XII. They're literally the same universe, different time points on the timeline. And that's one of the very few occasions Square, they've actually openly done that.
Mm.
Because after 9 was a great send-off for the PlayStation 1. So that's all I'll say on Tactics. Love the game. If you have a PlayStation 3, grab it because you can play it on there. Emulate it. Like, if you have a PlayStation 1, get it. Like,
if you have Game Pass, it's on there.
Oh, it's not?
Yeah, it is.
Final Fantasy Tactics is on Xbox Game Pass.
Oh, I thought we were talking about 9. Sorry.
Okay, I was about to be like, bro, what?
Actually, hold on. I have to check that now because I think I did see a Final Fantasy Tactics looking thing. Because they're doing the remake, right?
No, that's Tactics Ogre Reborn.
Tactics Ogre Reborn is being remade. Dang it! What was the fucking thing I saw? Oh, whatever. We'll solve.
We're
gonna
look at this after this because I am very curious.
Okay.
So
10. We need to jump into 10.
We're leaving the PlayStation 1. Like, Sakaguchi saved the franchise.
Yay!
He stopped the bloodletting.
He stopped Nomura's dark influence on the games.
So 10
and
hits.
Yoshinori Kitase and.
So 10 hits, right? PlayStation 2's out. Final Fantasy X is one of the early games on the PlayStation 2, and holy shit does it deliver.
I just remember that metal-ass intro when the city was being destroyed. Like, even I played that game, too, so shit.
Like, hell, you remember, like, when you finally get to the end of the game and you're fighting Jecht, who is Sin, and it's just a metal song playing, and it's not just, like, you know, Metallica metal, it's like...
Yeah, I believe Nobuo Uematsu said his influences there were like, what if Tchaikovsky and Jimi Hendrix made a song together? Yes.
That man, composer of the ages for video games.
He is a genius. He's a musical genius.
I mean, he literally wrote One Winged Angel on napkins.
Really?
Yeah.
How did he play it?
I'll show you after this. I will show you the history.
How did he play it on a napkin? He blew his nose.
So 10 comes, and we're still following the deviation. Everything has to be different. Your characters are all different in this one. The sphere grid is the exact same. Everybody can learn everything, but everybody has an individual identity. Yuna's the summoner, Kimari's the blue mage, Aura...
Lulu's the hottie.
Yep, and then Riku is the alchemist, Lulu's the black mage initially.
Waka's the jock.
Yep, Tidus is the soy boy.
You've leveled up to cuck.
So this is...
He's voiced by James Arnold Taylor, by the way, who was the voice of Ratchet. And the voice of Leo in the 2007 TMNT movie.
That was a good movie. I like that one.
That was a great movie, and no one, like, it made money, but, like, no one talks about it.
I still own it.
That's good, but I'm just saying no one talks about it.
I'm someone, damn it.
And damn it, you're gonna hear what I have to say about the turtles.
So...
Blows the bay turtles out of the water. But yes, so 10 comes out, and again, a landmark moment for the franchise. Still...
Voice acting.
Yes. And the cutscenes were still a big part of it.
The game itself was a cutscene, if you think about it, because a lot of it was just the traditional graphics with the voice acting, which I appreciate, because that was a step to, like, hey, let's normalize this so it's not just flashy cutscene with voice acting or this. Like, the cutscenes, yeah, they were there. Like,
I'm sure the localization was just hell. Okay, not just that part either.
That was a train wreck.
Right, but there's context to it, at least. It's a meme for a reason, but still.
Now, here's the scary part. So, up until now, it's Squaresoft.
Oh, yeah.
So, in my opinion, this is the critical juncture for the deviation of Final Fantasy as we know it and the downhill decline. Squaresoft kept people like Nomura at bay. Yes, you know, every game was starting to get different from 6 onward, but...
I can hear Laredo right now just kind of shaking in his seat like, don't talk to ill of him.
So, but Squaresoft kept it in check because at the end of the day, they still adhered to their core. Because 10 still had that sense of adventure. Like, when you wake up in Spira and you have that first little fight the weird fish thing into, oh shit, it's 1,000 years later. Oron is there, but he's a dead spirit.
Who shaves his armpits still.
You get, you just get that sense of wonderment, like when you're exploring. Like, remember when you hit the wildlands where you can have the monster arena where you're catching them and he's making the super monsters, running around there was awesome. Like seeing the love put into the world, like dodging the lightning for Lulu's ultimate weapon.
Yep.
Like,
I just remember my brother doing that, and he would get to like 99 and just get super pissed when he would not get 100.
And like Riku and the Al Bhed, like seeing like the societal oppression that they had to go through. Like there were so many good messages. There was so much good storytelling. There was so much power with areas of the game. 10, great.
Mm-hmm.
Halfway through, like, so 10's released, and they haven't put out 11 yet. They haven't put out 12 yet. But once it became Square Enix, 10 you could literally get a copy as Squaresoft, or you could get a copy that was Square Enix.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the last Squaresoft quote game with box art like that was Kingdom Hearts, actually.
So,
damn.
Yeah. Now, Square Enix, their first Final Fantasy foray, 10-2.
Oh, yeah. That one.
Yeah, 10-2.
What? So, this is where, like, my research kind of subsides, and I just kind of go by word of mouth because I lived through seeing this stuff.
You're right.
And so, what was that?
So, they had, as I'm quoting you here, they had the lightning in the bottle with the story with Tidus and Yuna, right?
Mm-hmm.
They had recreated a wonderful story moment. Instead of dragging it forever like Final Fantasy VII is, they decided, you know what? We're immediately going to do 10-2 because they have to go back and we got to find Tidus, right?
And I just think it's so weird.
And it's
Yuna with guns and hot pants.
And the clothes you wear are your job.
That's cool. Like, that's a cool idea. But I think just the transition of Yuna the Summoner to
Yuna the gun chick,
the Lara Croft.
It was rough.
Did they acquire Eidos at that time? I don't know. Anyway.
I mean, they had some cool super bosses, but it did not deliver. Like, legitimately, that game hit $5, I think, within, like, 6 months.
But like, what was the reason behind it? Like, why did that happen?
So, my thoughts on it. So, for the purpose of this episode, because I knew I wanted to have an episode about Final Fantasy as a franchise, because it is a fallen franchise if we look at it for all intents and purposes, right?
Right.
So I went back through, I played 10-2, like I have the combo pack for PlayStation 3, PS4, and the Switch. Yay, I bought the same game 3 times!
Hey, I did that with Overwatch, so don't worry about it.
The tonal shift, the everything, there's no actual build. It took that remaster to give you a cutscene, so like a voice acting cutscene, from after 10 into 10-2 to kind of tie in some loose ends. It was just hollow, man.
I opened up the Wikipedia right now, and
okay.
I'm reading some excerpts from like the actual development of the game, and you know a lot of the people were still there. It was still Yoshinori Kitase, it was Tetsuya Nomura, those guys. The previous game's writer was skeptical about the creation of a sequel. He was particularly adverse to a happy ending, which felt wrong for the story because they wanted to bring a more upbeat atmosphere to the game. Producer Yoshinori Kitase and director Motomo Toriyama explained that the objective in mind when designing Final Fantasy X2 was to embrace the concept of change as the game's theme and establish a more upbeat atmosphere than its predecessor. Retaining the engine and locations from the original game meant the team could spend most of the time on the gameplay systems and plot. To portray the drastic change in Spira, the developers excluded summons, redesigned towns, and included vehicles, low-flying vehicles like that. The ending of Final Fantasy VI with the Aeon summoning system. Sorry, I'm just kind of mumbling right now, but like, they drew inspiration from Charlie's Angels. That is one of the lines. Three non-macho girls were intended to keep the tone of the game light and lively. Lulu was excluded from the playable cast because, in addition to being married, her presence would have given her an older sister role to Yuna. How do Japanese men think women are?
I mean, you just read it. Do you see what I mean about tonal shift?
Yeah, like, they drew inspiration from the magical girl subgenre of anime and manga to create an elaborate transformation sequence and the dress sphere system. Like, but I'm struggling to understand why they did it. Like, I can see the influences and like why those are like evident, but I'm wondering why they made it at all.
Company shift. So Squaresoft as a company, Squaresoft as a company, it wasn't about profit. It wasn't about cash cow after cash cow, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was, we want you to enjoy this wonderful story with us, which is why them as a company tap danced around bankruptcy with every game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They cared more about your experience than they did about the bottom dollar. Enix comes in and yeah, like
well, Enix isn't a bad company. Like, they're not. Like, they did the Dragon Quest games.
they did. But the problem is now that you have Square Enix, it's instead of having that traditionalistic approach to honor the game like the Dragon Quest franchise did, it's, hey, this is Final Fantasy. We know this has been bigger than ours. Let's milk this. It's time. Let's go. So 10-2 hits, right? And then around that time, like just a little bit after, that's when we got Crisis Core. That's when we got Dirge of Cerberus, right?
Yeah, the exploration of the first re-exploration and examination of the franchise that they were trying to build out of 7.
It wasn't good. Japan only, so I'll touch base on this a little bit later, but Japan only got what could have made for an amazing way to shift the franchise. Final Fantasy Type 0 was a PSP game originally, only in Japan.
I remember.
So I will pause that, and I will reapproach that once we hit the modern age with the PlayStation 4 and onward. So they're making middle-of-the-road games. Nostalgia is selling, and it's very loose nostalgia because it's barely 10 years old at this time. 97 to 2007 timeframe, right?
We're talking about the renaissance of 7, right?
Yeah, like the Dirge of Cerberus,
Okay.
your Crisis Core. So, like, they're kind of feeding on nostalgia. They're making money. And then we get the advent of the 360. We get the advent of the PlayStation 3.
The 7th generation of consoles, yes.
We start seeing some trailers, and we start getting hyped up at E3s and other conventions for Final Fantasy 13.
And I remember seeing those trailers when they first came out, and you see the pink-haired girl in the train, and like numbers are flying off of dudes that she shoots with a gun. And I'm like, this doesn't look like any Final Fantasy I've seen, but it looks like the current Square Enix Final Fantasy that we've grown accustomed to over the past 5 years.
And
what felt like 5 years.
Yeah.
Because after 11 and 12, because no one talks about 12 too much. Are we going to talk about 12 at all?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So 11, it's their foray into MMOs. It was
WoW, World of War crap. Ugh. But
so Final Fantasy 11 was also on the PlayStation 2. You could play it online.
And it was on the 360.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Yeah, like if you liked MMOs and Final Fantasy, like their way of making their game hard was just to make things virtually impossible. A boss released at one point in 11, legitimately a guild fought it for 2 days straight. People rotating in, rotating out. One mistake happened, boss went back up to full health. Shit like that.
Sounds like the final boss in Ancient Gods, but anyway.
So Final Fantasy 12 comes out, which is the first true standalone for Square Enix in the Final Fantasy genre. And they're still very, very high on pseudo MMO-esque shit.
Yep.
So
that's why it looked like fun to play. Like when I saw it when it came out.
They like the opening scene, really cool, betrayal happening.
The bunny key people, yeah.
And then you get the new opening scene where you meet Vaughn, you get to become you join the hunter, you go on your first quest. They muddied the waters, and they muddied the waters hard.
Well, I find that interesting because from what I was, because again, I was, paying attention to the games and reviews around this time, and Final Fantasy 12 came out, and people said, like, it was a much more mature story and a bit of because coming off of 11 and X2 at the time, it was a much better fit for the Final Fantasy franchise and like the welcome changes to game design because people wanted action games and stuff.
It was, but here's where it hit wrong. So if I give you a game like Doom, who's the main character of Doom?
Doom guy.
100%, right?
Yeah.
I give you Final Fantasy IV. Cecil, I give you Far Cry 6. Who's your main character?
Danny, yeah.
You definitively know, right? Final Fantasy 12, Vaughn feels like a bitchy side character. Like, your main character...
So who's the protagonist?
The protagonist ends up being like the princess.
That's fine. Because
she's... No. She should be the protagonist, but Vaughn is. And as you progress, Vaughn doesn't feel like the protagonist, even though the game is forcing it.
Well, there are games that do that really well. Like
this did not.
Okay, if it didn't do it, that's fine, because I think of Undertale. And if you think about the actual story dynamics and characters, like, you are a cipher for which you are delivered through the story and see the protagonists of their own world. That's what Undyne is, that's what Papyrus is, all that stuff.
Yeah.
If they would have done that correctly, which, based on what you said, they didn't, that could have worked well.
So the combat system, like, you technically pick your class and you start in on their wannabe sphere grid.
The job system, yeah.
So balance was off. Like, at one point, so in the vein of pseudo MMO-esqueness, you're in the opening area, you're fighting you're fighting what you need to, the starting monsters. They're just a wandering fucking T-Rex.
So it's Xenoblade Chronicles.
It's like, oh, cool, Final Fantasy logic. This is just a bigger enemy that I can take. Neat. No. You get bitch slapped.
So it's Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
Kind of.
Why is there a level 300 monster in the kitty starting area?
Like, its original release, no. There was way too much wrong with it. The re-release on the PS4
Zodiac Age, yeah,
fixed a lot of the issues, which thanks, and gave you something that was fleshed out and actually truly enjoyable.
Okay.
But we'll pause there, because that's also the advent of let's re-release everything. PlayStation 3 hits, and 360, because the 360 also got these games.
Yes.
Final Fantasy 13. 13-2. And 13, Lightning Reborn.
Lightning Returns.
Or whatever. That is right. Returns.
I knew a Final Fantasy thing better than you did.
Well, it shows you how much I care about 13.
Well, I'm sure there are some fans out there. But from the only real tidbit I know about Final Fantasy 13 is that, again, it was trying to recapture some of the essences that made Final Fantasy 7 so popular. And that's why Lightning became the main character, because the woman with the dark kind of wild hair and the blue, I don't know her name.
So that's the one. So the 13 is actually the game in the franchise I have zero play experience with.
Holy crap. So what are we going to talk about? But from what the story, from what I heard from the development, is that originally Lightning had a personality much more like hers. But then because they wanted to kind of echo Final Fantasy VII, they removed that and made a new character with it.
Square Enix got hung up on the glory that is 7. And when you get hung up on things in the past, one of two things happen. You get your Dirge of Cerberuses, your Crisis Cores, which are exploring other avenues of the story, which I'm okay for, because, that, like, if there are questions, I want answers to my questions, right? You can't try and force what worked then to work now. That is a over 10-year gap. Gaming evolves. Like, right now, gaming's all about shooters. Gaming's all about intense action, quick, in your face, boom, boom, boom.
Battle passes.
Like, if gaming were to slow back to the turn-based combat shit, gamers would blow their brains out.
I also just want to touch on, because I do have Wikipedia open to kind of fact-check us as we're talking about this. Toriyama wanted Lightning to be a new type of female character with an athlete's body and a less feminine nature than some of the previous female characters of the series. His guideline to Nomura was to make her strong and beautiful, and she was intended to be reminiscent of Final Fantasy VII's Cloud Strife. Fang was initially meant to be a male character, but the gender was changed to coincide with the updated character designs during a later part of development.
Well, hey, Nomura, guess what? You sucked.
Wow. But, again, this is also where we saw the split, where we saw the heart of the Final Fantasy franchise go away. We saw Motomo Toriyama step in for more of the director/designer's chair.
Yep.
With Nomura and Kitase and all those guys up in there. Hironobu Sakaguchi left, and he made Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon.
And then gave us The Last Story, which was supposed to be his magnum opus.
Supposed to be.
Yeah, we went over this a couple episodes ago. When did he release on mobile systems?
No. Because Last Story was on the Wii.
Yeah.
And was that good?
It was amazing.
Really?
It was...
Because the way you made it sounded like it was horrible.
No. Like, it was supposed to be his magnum opus. And, like, I say it that way because it makes me sad, because that man and gaming go hand in hand like Sakurai and Smash go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
But when you lose the core and you lose the heart, it allows companies like Square Enix to fully take over and just kind of shit can your stuff. So 13, meh. 13-2, we're going to try this again. Meh. Lightning Returns. Meh.
Let's do Majora's Mask, but Final Fantasy it. And let's also bring back the dress sphere system.
And
I think this is also, again, like where we saw another big transition with the direction of these types of games. Because, and I'm going to actually have the Wikipedia open so I say this correctly, because Final Fantasy 13 was supposed to be another one of those big seminal moments in Final Fantasy history.
It was, for all the wrong reasons.
Fabula Nova Crystallis. The people who know those three arranged words know what kind of a clusterfuck this became. Because you had Final Fantasy Versus 13, you had the the two other games that spun off of it, the sequels to it, and you had Final Fantasy Versus 13. And part of me wants to have another chapter break, because we're on an hour and a half right now, and I know we're going to go another half hour longer.
So don't touch that dial. We are leaving the PlayStation 3. Good riddance, Final Fantasy 13. There's nothing else that needs to be said. Please do experience it, because I myself will be, just to say I've experienced this for the Final Fantasy lore, but it was literally the tentpole moment that broke the franchise and put it into a massive downward spiral.
I just want to see the comment section on this episode. But yes, we'll be right back, folks. Don't go anywhere. Again, this is coming from mainly an outsider's perspective, which is because I saw all this happen in real time, because I lived through it.
Mm-hmm.
I lived through all of this stuff. I was just in America, where a lot of the other Japanese stuff just didn't happen. But every time I saw trailers for things like Final Fantasy 13, it looked like what a Final Fantasy game should look like.
It did, but it was awful. It was the thing that put it in the downward spiral. And now we hit our current generation of consoles. Well, technically the last generation.
So we because of the Fabula Novella Crystallis, right?
Mm-hmm.
I brought up Final Fantasy Versus 13. I remember legit being excited for that game because I was a fan of Kingdom Hearts, right?
Yep.
And when I heard Nomura was making his version of Final Fantasy, I thought, cool, it's going to be... Even to his own admission, he was like, I want to make something about men living in the real world, which you're making a fantasy RPG. I don't know what the hell you're talking about, dude. But everything that they did from trailers down to concept and stuff, it looked like the grown-up version, grown up to what a 15, 16-year-old thinks is grown-up, of Final Fantasy. And I was excited for that. And then development hell happened for about 10 years.
Yep. So we're going to leave the PlayStation 3 in the dust, and Final Fantasy 14, it's an MMO, it's still going, current content was made for it, and
when the game initially came out, it was broken and garbage, and they spent basically 2-3 years of a guy's life just trying to rebuild it. And good, because everybody loves that game now, so yay.
It has actually been voted the best MMO in existence right now. Like, it is,
and it also apparently has the best story in a recent Final Fantasy game ever. So to those who want to play it, go for it.
Hey, if you like MMOs and Final Fantasy, look, a love child.
They actually did it right.
So
I just think that's so funny. Because it's like this thing that, like, you know, big numbered sequel. We're gonna get the combat director from Dragon Fighters, from Devil May Cry 5, and he's gonna make it so Final Fantasy 16 is the best thing ever. Actually, the best thing ever already happened.
Hindsight.
Yeah, but
so 15. Final Fantasy 15 was our next big mainline entry. And if you thought 13 was bad, let me take you on the journey that is Final Fantasy, a bros trip.
And what's funny is immediately I'm struck with, because this is the one I actually tried to play myself.
Keyword being try.
I say tried because it hooked me immediately, and then just by the nature of the actual game design, it broke me instantly.
It's like, oh, I'm vested.
And, like, it starts off so well. Like, you see the dudes, like, the car's broken down and they're pushing it toward a service station. That gives me such a very... That scene just feels so, like, real. And I'm like, okay, I know what I'm in for, and this looks awesome. How are they going to incorporate all of the monsters and the fighting and all that stuff? And when you have people, like, on the hover carriers swoop in and drop in enemies, I'm like, okay, I'm here for it. And then they just dropped the ball so hard because the world building is crap and the open world serves nothing. And then it was, you know, missing content and the long hallway toward the end of the game.
Hey, I gotta go do this. I'll be back. What apparently lasts for 2 months, I'm back.
And even for me, from like an actual design perspective, so the whole goal is to bond with your bros. That's like the emotional heart of the story.
100%.
And everything in the game design incentivizes not doing that. Like, why? Why did you make that choice?
Yeah. So 15 literally had to release extra content just in order for it to be a playable experience. So what should have been your one-time purchase ended up being a 2 or 3-time purchase, depending on how vested you were to make this story end.
Yeah, and what's crazy is that kind of... It's alongside a lot of the current practices that make a lot of games nowadays kind of crap. Or, you know how people get mad about day one patches and all sorts of stuff, like, oh, the DLC is going to come out and make it so much better. That still sucks. But the fact that it's kind of been adopted so much, it's like, well, eventually the game got good. It's like, yeah, but why wasn't it good to begin with? And that's going to come into our actual development stories of 15, so.
15 was just all over the place, and... When you deviate, so 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll say 1 through 7 and 9, 1 through 7 and 9, you have a blueprint for success. You don't have to recreate the lightning in the bottle. Simple is good. Centralized theme is good.
I'm glad you are saying this stuff, because I'd be usually the one saying it.
I may love JRPGs, and some of them may be way out there and have stories that go left, right, up, down, north, south, side, B, A.
You might collect women like Pokemon.
But you have to have a story. And with 15, because of the development hell it went through, the changes it went through in development hell, the manicness it went through to get some type of product rushed to people... You didn't have a central theme. You didn't have something that was your core moment. You had what literally felt like you were playing a game that was part of a game, that was part of another game, that was part of that had a story here.
Which is funny because that's true. Because that's what it became eventually. Because the way that I witnessed it being developed, and of course the research I did prior to this episode, it talks about how Nomura wanted to make a very specific vision in his head. And how the story was laid out, he had everything prepared and ready to go, and for whatever reason, no matter how many people they threw at it, no matter how much they actually developed it, it never took proper shape, ever. You could always get a motif or like a visual kind of like of what it's supposed to look like or feel like, but you never got an actual game out of that.
Nope.
And that's the thing that doomed the project. Like, I was even reading the Wikipedia, and they said the voice actress for one of the characters who ended up getting replaced with another character, like 2/3 of the script got cut of what was supposed to be. We use the term magnum opus kind of loosely on this show, but I still feel as far back as the fallen franchises of Kingdom Hearts, so 2 Square franchises already in this.
Hey-o.
But
only almost 30 episodes apart.
But Tetsuya Nomura has a vision, and he has something he wants to make, and it's still struggling to get out. And I want to know what that is, because it has the potential to be really good. He just needs to be handled.
So here's the thing. Vision is amazing, right?
Yeah.
Having a vision, having an idea, and seeing it come to fruition is an awesome thing. When it comes to a franchise like Final Fantasy, that ain't it.
It doesn't say it can't be, but
you are right. But when you have something like that, you can't go so far abstractly out there, because you will lose your player base. You will lose your core engagement and your core audience. Because 15, like, people prefer 13 over 15, man.
Damn.
Like, and I know that's probably going to get me roasted in some form or fashion, but yeah.
It's funny, too, because this is where the novelty of just how games speak to people is so different between each person.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that there are people out there who will be fans of this and they will see Final Fantasy 15 as basically the JRPG version of Stand By Me. Because if you wanted to break down the actual story of what Final Fantasy 15 became, it's the journey of a guy who's not ready, a prince who's not ready to be king as he is forced to become king.
Yep.
And his most trusted friends and bodyguards and all those people are watching him ascend to that. And then they get, sacked along the way. But
so 15 hits.
You'd like to Aerith dying in Final Fantasy 7? What if 3 of your best male Aerith friends died? And then you died too.
Like 15. So it was at this point in time that Square Enix, they backfooted a little bit. There was no more originality for a while. We had Final Fantasy 12, the Zodiac Age, that got released, fixed the issues from the first one. Cool. They made their money. 10-2 got yet another re-release.
Kingdom Hearts 3 finally came out.
Different franchise, but yes.
I mean, it's all the same company still, and it's all the same people.
Fair. But then you had, so the game we briefly touched on, and John mentioned, he even played it, Final Fantasy Type 0.
Mm-hmm.
So Type 0 was right before Final Fantasy 15, and there was a little bit of a hype train behind it because us in the West, we didn't get to experience it. And at this point in time, we're talking the 2014-2015 time range, RPGs have blown up and kind of become pseudo center stage with your Metal Gears and your other shooters. Like, a lot of people were starting to enjoy the experience or appreciate the experience.
How can you think Metal Gear is a shooter?
No, I used Metal Gear and then shooters. Metal Gear, shooters.
Okay.
Anywho, Type 0 opens up, and probably what is one of the most mature things you will ever see in a JRPG. Like, the opening scene, you literally have a chocobo die. And not just die, like, it is a bloody death.
We have touched on this so many times, and I still think it's the most squandering of potential to symbolically upend your entire franchise and then still have it just be bleh.
Yeah, just to be a fart in the wind.
Yeah. Yeah, that. You symbolically, like, sacrifice, you ritualistically sacrificed the symbol of the lightheartedness and cutesiness of your franchise for what?
A classroom game.
You sacrificed it for Valkyria Chronicles 2. What the hell, Square?
So you have this period of just kind of static shit. Like, they work on other projects, they push some other things, but Final Fantasy
movie.
Like, Final Fantasy kind of got forgotten. Like, 14 was still going around, but that was literally the only good thing going for Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I think there was a moral inventory taken at Square Enix after 15's kind of tumultuous development hell for a decade. And they were like, look, if we want to make something, we'll give Nomura his plaything, which became Strangers of Paradise, which I still am going to play. I might actually stream that game, so stay tuned.
So,
and then they announced Final Fantasy 16.
Well, we forgot. So, the reemergence of the franchise started with the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Yeah, that.
So, love it or hate it,
I'm seeing the mods come out on PC, and you see, like, the midriff that Cloud's wearing.
So, love it or hate it, it kind of sparked a re-engagement. So, newer gamers, quite a few of them never really experienced Final Fantasy VII, or dove into Advent Children, or any of it, really. And it's a game that's literally designed to engage the current demographic of gamers.
Mm-hmm.
It's the spectacle is there, like 100%. It literally, when it hit, if you had an OG model PlayStation 4, you bricked your console.
Mm-hmm.
It pushed the PS4 Pro to its limits.
Yeah, again, spectacle.
And it reignited an interest and engagement for the franchise. So we fast forward, because that was it. That's all she wrote on the PlayStation 4. And then PS5 hits, and we get what you mentioned, Stranger of Paradise, which is as straightforward a game as you can imagine.
Every single time I talk about this game, I say, it's like if they made me the protagonist in a JRPG.
I'm here because the long lost blah blah blah. Shut up, I'm just here to kill chaos. Fuck
just
you.
tell me how to get there. That scene where Jack just shuts up like the mage who's going to tell him how to get to the person he needs to fight. Or when he actually jumps up and like puts his fists out. I don't give a fuck who you are! And he's about to punch a monster in the face.
It's nice.
They put Doom Guy in Final Fantasy.
Basically. It's refreshing. And I know I've used the word refreshing quite a bit in this episode, but Final Fantasy was taking itself too seriously. It was going down such a stagnant rabbit hole that all it was turning it literally just turned into a nostalgic cash grab.
Yeah. The lessons that Squaresoft and Square Enix internalized with the advent, see what I did there, of Final Fantasy VII was spectacle above all things. Mm-hmm. And you can't carry a franchise that way.
Nope. And you get Stranger of Paradise, which they just released some more content for. So if you haven't played that yet, take a look at that.
If they fix it, because you can only play it on like the hardest difficulty.
Hey, get good. Literally, it got put in there.
No, I want to put... I think you actually play... I need to research this more. Anyway, continue.
Stranger of Paradise added... I mean, it's a very serious like game, but it get like in the sense for like, you know, the atmosphere, the ambiance, but it's
so funny.
Yeah, it's over like it is over the top. I don't take myself seriously. I want you to have a good time playing me, which is what Final Fantasy needed.
Yep.
I would argue that Stranger of Paradise was the catalyst that's gonna keep this franchise potentially going past 16, because
what was the reception to Stranger of Paradise?
For the most part, it was very warmly received. Your purists were like, blah, 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 blah. I'm a purist, blah, 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 rub my nipples, purist.
I see exactly who those people are in my head. Thank you, straw people.
So here's the thing. I get the big controversy was Final Fantasy VII Remake. This isn't the same story. Why didn't you just remake that? Blah, blah, blah.
And now they're doing it anyway for mobile.
And, like...
I think that's crazy. Can we just say that? Can we just kind of acknowledge that right away? Final Fantasy VII Remake comes out, which is supposed to be a remake of their seminal game.
Uh-huh.
And people were like, well, was good, but and then they're like, fine, and then they do it for mobile. They're like, here you go, just eat it, people.
Yep.
Eat until you throw up. Bury them in it.
So it's
oh boy, it's so the decadence of just what they are trying to do to make it so it's like, just love us.
So
Square Enix is this like, just love us, please.
Come back to me.
We'll make Final Fantasy. We'll make freaking Kingdom Hearts 4, and there's not gonna be no Goofy, no Donald, no Disney. It's just gonna be Sora and Shinjuku fighting shadow monsters. Just love us, please.
So 16, we're getting that next year.
Mm-hmm. Which looks amazing. I will say, even for all we've said, it looks fun to play, and it looks like a semi-return to form. When you see like a cast system and castles and kings and stuff and all that, and monsters and summons, that to me is Final Fantasy.
I am cautiously optimistic for the future, and I think this is like the perfect note to kind of end on. This franchise, it's taken a beating. It is taking a massive beating since 10-2, and that was what, 2005, right? 2005.
2016. Wait, Final Fantasy what?
10-2 came out in what, 2005, 2006?
Well, when did 13 come out? That was like 2009, right? 2010?
Here. We have the Googles.
Shit. I actually have it open too. It came out in 2009. Yeah.
Okay. So, 2009.
Worldwide in 2010. So for the past 10 years, Square has basically been flopping around like a magic carp.
No, for the past 19 years, because 10-2, and I was horribly wrong, I apologize. March 13th, 2003. That was 10-2.
That's a lifetime ago, bro.
So for 19 years, this franchise has struggled to have an identity. This franchise has struggled to engage its audience. This franchise has struggled to put out a product that it's a testament of time. I could go back right now. Like I told you earlier, I told all of you earlier in the episode, I am legitimately, once I'm done with Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I'm going to go through Final Fantasy 5 again. It's amazing. After that, I will go through 6 again. It's amazing. You look at all of the powerful moments of the franchise, 1 through 6, 7, and 9. 10 is fun. 10 is like, it's fun. I'll play it on a day. Like, I have no ill will towards 10.
When Nina says thank you. And then they changed it to I love you in English.
You're welcome. I love you too.
I want to go high five my dead dad.
Nothing they have put out since 10-2 has left me with any sense of, I want to go back and experience this, or, I want to re-engage that world. And when your video games don't do that, like, especially when it comes to a JRPG, you failed. Like, you need replayability. You need stopping power.
You need stopping power.
Hey, look, callback. So this franchise has seen better days, but I think you would agree with me, John. Like 16, we're both pretty cautiously excited for it. I'm more willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because I think every time I do that with a video game, I get burnt. Looking at you, Star Ocean 5.
What happened to Star Ocean 5?
Integrity and faithlessness. I just want you to just watch one review on YouTube about that game, and you will be like, oh.
It's just a guy hanging up from the ceiling off camera. Oh. But I see what they're doing with the combat, because I saw their initial trailer. And it looks like they're trying to take it, again, in that more mature direction, but they're bringing things back to a fantasy base.
100%.
It's no longer based in the future. There's no steampunk stuff. It's all sorcery and magic and summons and knights and kings and stuff and wars. Like, I am interested in that. Yep. Because I think that is what Final Fantasy did best. And, again, blasphemy to some people because Final Fantasy VII of what it did and all that. But, no, I think there's a heart to that, and the fact that they're trying to come back to it helps. And the fact that they're throwing away the hybrid combat system of Remake to actually make something a bit more akin to an actual action game, simple. Keep it simple. Just do that.
So, as always, you know that you can find us on...
For the episode's finally 2 hours in, we're done.
Hey, look, you ended it on a powerful moment, so now I have to send us off on...
We got to do the rigmarole now.
A fart in the wind. Call back to earlier in the episode.
That's gonna be my truck horn. when you see a guy doing like the do the horn, and it just oh man, the ethanol, no.
So you can find us on the Twitter experience is John, Games with John and James.
We're at Games with a J and J over on the Twitter. We just updated all the logos with all the new stuff that I've been giving y'all. Thank you for letting me have the free reign to visually explore the stuff that we do.
Well, it's not letting you. You are a partner in this. Letting you would mean you're my employee. You're an equal.
It's kind of what it feels like.
Oh. Oh,
I am fucking with you. But yes, you can see us over there on the Twitter. And with season 3, I made a joke about not a joke. I made a statement about how we're gonna have like a new title theme. Yeah, I can't reach out to the guy that I want to do our theme song because I can't just get a hold of him. He doesn't have an email.
Yeah, that's kind of weird, right?
Well, I mean, if he's a pro, I'm pretty sure he shares that with people in the inner circle. But yeah, if you can reach out to Dominic, someone can get me in touch with him. Please let me know.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
As you know, Instagram, Facebook, at Games with John and James.
You saw us on there recently celebrating 100 followers, bro.
So thank you so much. Like, we couldn't do this without your support. We love, love, love talking to you guys. We love being able to just dick off in fun fashions with video game shit.
True enough. And also, the blog is coming. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we're both bad at writing.
Games with the JJ, coming soon. Don't worry.
Stay tuned. 2 years later.
Christ.
Hey, look, we're in development hell.
Oh my god. We're exactly like Squeenix.
We're squeamishly Squeenix.
That's going to be the title of the episode. But I think any other last notes, or are we done?
Nope. So play these games, the ones I mentioned. I mean, you can forego some.
Play the good ones. Play the good ones.
Final Fantasy V, that's the one I recommend. John, which one would you recommend people try?
Honestly, Stranger of Paradise.
So we have a modern one and a classic.
Yep.
Play them both, get them both, do it.
You know what? If you're like me, play Dirge of Cerberus and skip the cutscenes. And just see what kind of trip you go on. It's fun.
Yep. So, as always,
I'm John.
And I'm James.
This has been Games with John and James, Fallen Franchises, Final Fantasy. This episode is as bloated as those games are.
Q, One Winged Angel.
I hear that every time we get in your car.
Giggity. See y'all later.
Whatever noise that was. All right, peace out, everybody.